an independent initiative. And given what was going on, it would be ludicrous to assume that one of the heavyweight thugs of the lands of fairy just happened to be doing an independent contract in the home of the recently deceased. Ogres are wild fae. They could work either winter or summer, and they could have a range of personalities and temperaments running the gamut from jovially violent to maliciously violent. Grum hadn't seemed to be on the cheerful end of that particular scale, but he had been both decisive and restrained. The average walking mountain of muscle from Fairy wouldn't have been held back from beating me to a pulp, regardless of what the neighbors shouted. That meant Grum had more savvy than the average bear, that he was dangerous, even if I didn't take into account how easily he ignored the spells I'd hurled at him. All ogres have an innate capacity for neutralizing magical forces to one degree or another. Grum had grounded out my spells like I'd been scuffing my feet on the carpet to give a little static electricity zap. That meant he was an old fairy and a strong one. The quick and thorough shape-shifting supported that assessment as well. Your average club-swinging few-monger couldn't have taken human form complete with clothing so ably. Smart plus strong plus quick equals badass. Most likely he was a trusted personal guard or a highly placed enforcer, but for whom? At a stoplight, I stared at the photograph I'd taken from Grum. Damn, I muttered, who are these people? I added to the list of questions still growing like fungus in the locker room. Ronald Wells' funeral had already begun by the time I arrived. Flannery's funeral home on the River North area had been a family-run business until a few years before. It was an old place, but it had always been well kept. Now the carefully landscaped shrubbery had been replaced with big rocks, which were no doubt easier to maintain. The parking lot had a lot of cracks in it, and only about half the outdoor lights were burning. The sign in illuminated glass and plastic number that read Quiet Acres Funeral Home glared in garish green and blue above the front door. I parked the Beetle, tucked the phone in my pocket, and got out of the car. I couldn't casually take my stuff or my blaster and run to the funeral home. People who don't believe in magic look at you oddly when you walk in toting a big stick covered with carved runes and sigils. People who know what I am would react in much the same way if I'd walked in draped in belts of ammo and carrying a heavy caliber machine gun in each hand, John Wayne style. There could be plenty of each sort inside, so I carried only the low-profile stuff. My ring mostly depleted. Oh boy. Nevis, sweetheart. Oh my goodness. And my mother's silver pinnacle amulet. My reflection in the glass door reminded me that I had underdressed for the evening, but I wasn't there to make the social column. I slipped into the building and headed for the room where they had laid out Ronald Ruel. The old man had been dressed up in gray silk suit with a metallic sheen to it. It was a younger man's suit, and it looked too big for him. He would have looked much more comfortable in tweed. The mortician had done only a so-so job fixing Ruel up. His cheeks were too red and his lips too blue. You could see the dimples on his lips where thin lines of thread had been stitched through them to hold his mouth closed. No one would have mistaken this for an old man in the midst of his nap. This was a corpse, plain and simple. The room was about half full, people standing in little knots talking and passing back and forth in front of the casket. No one was standing in the shadows smoking a cigar or looking about with a shifty-eyed gaze. I couldn't see anyone quickly hiding a bloody knife behind his back or twirling a mustache either. That ruled out the Dudley Do-Right approach to finding the killer. Maybe he, she, or they weren't here. Of course, I suppose it would be possible for fairies to throw a veil or glamour over themselves before they came in, but even experienced fairies had trouble passing for mortal. Maud had looked good for sure, but she hadn't really looked normal. Grum had been much the same. I mean, he looked human, sure, but also like an extra on the set of the Untouchables. Fairies can do a lot of things really well, but blending in with a crowd generally isn't one of them. In any case, the crowd struck me as mostly relatives and business associates, so no one matched the pictures. No one seemed to be a fairy in a bad moral costume, and either my instincts had denied off or no one was using any kind of veil or glamour. Bad guys 1, Harry 0. I slipped out of the viewing room and went back into the hallway in time to hear a low whisper somewhere down the hall. That grabbed my attention. I made the effort to move quietly and crept a bit closer, listening as I went. I don't know, hissed the male voice. I've looked for her all day. She's never been gone this long. Just my point, growled a female voice. She doesn't stay gone this long. You know how she gets by herself. God, said a third voice in the light tenor of a young man. He did it. He really did it this time. We don't know that, the first man said. Maybe she finally used her head and got out of town. The woman's voice sounded tired. No, Ace, she wouldn't just leave, not on her own. We have to do something. What can we do? The second male said. Something, the woman said. Anything. Wow, that's specific. the first male. Apparently, Ace said with his voice dry and edgy. Whatever you're going to do, you better do it fast. The wizard's here. I felt the muscles in my neck grow tense. There was a short, perhaps shocked silence in the room down the hall. Here? The second male echoed in panicky tone. Now? Why didn't you tell us? I just did, dimwit, Ace said. What do we do? The second male asked. What do we do? What do we do? Shut up, snapped the female voice. Shut up, Fix. He's in Mob's pocket, said Ace. You know he is. She crossed over from Fairy today. No way, said the second voice, presumably Fix. He's supposed to be a decent sort, right? Depends on who you hear it from, said Ace. People who get in his way have a habit of getting real dead. Oh, God, said Fix, panting. Oh, God, look, said the woman. If he's here, we shouldn't be. Not until we know what it means. Furniture, maybe a wooden chair creak. Come on. I slipped back down the hall and around the corner into the lobby as I heard footsteps leaving the small side room. They didn't come toward me. Instead, they moved further down the hall away from the lobby. They had to be heading for a back door. I chewed on my lip, weighed my options. Three very apprehensive folks, maybe human, maybe not, heading down a darkened hall toward the back door that doubtless led into an equally dark alley. Sounded like a recipe for more trouble. But I didn't think I had any options. I counted to 5 and then followed the footsteps. I saw only a retreating shadow in the far end of the hall. I looked into the room the three had been in as I went past it and found a small lounge with several upholstered chairs. I hesitated for a moment at the corner and heard the soft click of a metal door opening and closing again. As I rounded the corner, I saw a door with a faded sticker spelling exit. I went to the door and opened it as quietly as I could, then poked my head out into the alley. It opened into and rubbernecked around. They were standing not 5 feet away, 3 of the young people from Ruel's photo. The small, skinny man with the blonde, white hair and dark tan was facing me. He was dressed in what looked like a second-hand brown suit and yellow polyester clip-on tie. His eyes widened almost comically, and his mouth dropped open and shut. He squeaked, and it was enough for me to let me identify him as Fix. Beside him was the other young man, Ace. He was the one with the dark curly hair and goatee, wearing the gray sport coat with a white shirt and dark slacks. He still had his sunglasses on when he turned to look at me. He clawed at the pocket of his jacket upon seeing me. The third was the brawny, homely young woman with the muddy green hair and heavy brow. She had on a pair of jeans light enough to show the muscles in her thighs and a khaki blouse. She didn't hesitate. She didn't even look. She just turned, her arm sweeping out as she did, and she fetched me a blow to my cheek with the back of one shovel-sized hand. I managed to move with it a bit at the last second, but even so, the impact threw me out of the doorway and into the alley. Stars and cartoon birdies danced in my vision, and I rolled trying to get clear before she could hit me again. Ace pulled a small caliber semi-automatic from his jacket pocket, but the woman growled at him. Don't be stupid, they'll kill us all. Hibbidi-bibbidi, I said, by way of attempting to greet him. My mouth had gone rather numb, and my tongue felt like lead weight. Just hang on, Thicky. Fix jumped up and down, pointing at me, his voice shrill. He's casting on us. The woman kicked me in the ribs hard enough to knock the wind out of me. Then she picked me up by the back of my pants, grunting with the effort, and threw me into the air. I came down 10 feet away in an open dumpster and crunched down amid cardboard boxes and stinking refuse. Go, the woman barked. Go, go, go. I lay in the garbage for a minute trying to catch my breath. The sound of 3 sets of running feet receded down the alley. I just sat up when a head popped into view over me, vague in the shadows. I flinched and threw up my left arm, willing power through the shield bracelet. I accidentally made the shield too big, and sparks kicked up where the shield intersected the middle of the dumpster, but by their light I saw whose head it was. Harry? Billy the werewolf asked. What are you doing in there? I let the shield drop and landed, extended a hand to him, looking for suspects. He frowned and hauled me out of the trash. I wobbled for a second or two until my head stopped spinning quite so quickly. Billy steadied me with one hand. You find any? I'd say so, yeah. Billy nodded and peered up at me. Did you decide that before or after they hit you in the face and threw you in the garbage? Actually, yeah. I I brushed the coffee grounds off my jeans. Do I tell you how to do your job? Actually, yeah, all the time. Okay, I muttered. Did you bring the pizza? Yeah, Billy said. Got it back in the car. Why? I brushed at my shaggy hair. What I'd hoped were more coffee grounds fell out. I started walking down the alley toward the front of the building. Because I need to make a few bribes, I said, looking back over my shoulder at Billy. Do you believe in fairies? Aren't those... Sorry. Let's take a good swig of something to drink. 1 second. Just tending to a few Just making sure some things. Just refreshing. Refreshing connections and what heck the fuck? Okay, there it goes. Just making sure everything's good. Chapter 13. Billy held the pizza while I drew the chalk circle on the ground back in the alley. Harry, he said, how's this supposed to work exactly? Hang on. I said I didn't quite complete the circle, but I took the pizza box from it, opened it, took out one piece, and put it down the middle of the circle on a napkin. Then I dabbed a bit of blood from the corner of my mouth while the girl had slugged me onto the bottom of the piece of pizza, stepped back, and completed the circle without willing it closed. Pretty simple, I said. I'll call the fairy in close to the pizza there. He'll smell it, jump on it, eat it. When he does, he'll get the bit of my blood and be enough energy to close the circle around him. Uh-huh, Billy said, his expression skeptical. He took out a second piece and started to take a bite. Then you beat the information out of him? I took the piece out of his hand, put it back in the box, and closed it, and then I bribed the information out of him. Save that pizza. Billy scowled at me, but he left the pizza alone. So what do I do? Sit tight, make sure no one else tries to pop me while I'm trying to talk to Toot Toot. Toot Toot, Billy asked, lifting an eyebrow. Hell's bells, Billy. I didn't pick the name. Just be quiet. If he thinks there are mortals around, he'll get nervous and leave before I can snare him. If you say so, Billy said. I was just hoping to do more good than deliver pizza. I raked my fingers through my hair. I don't know what you could do yet. I could track those three in the picture you showed me. I shook my head. Odds are they just got into a car and left. Yeah, he said, some forced patience in his voice, but if I get their scent now, it might help me find them later on. Oh, I said, feeling a bit stupid. Okay, I hadn't considered the whole shape-shifting angle. I find if you want to, just be careful, all right? I don't know what all might be prowling around. Okay, Mom, Billy said. He set the pizza box on top of a closed trash can, fell back down the alley and vanished. I waited until Billy had gone to find a nice patch of shadows to step into. Then I closed my eyes for a moment, drawing up my concentration, and began to whisper the fairy's name. Every intelligent being has a name, a specific series of spoken sounds linked to its very being. If a practitioner knows the name of something, knows it in every nuance and detail of pronunciation, then he can use that name to open a magical conduit to that being. That's how demons get summoned to the mortal world. Call something's name and you make contact with it. Even if you're a wizard, that means you can then exercise power over them no matter where in the world it is. See, that's why it's so much better not to tell everybody your full freaking name, because if they have that, I'm just saying, doxing ain't the half of it. Controlling an inhuman being via its name is a shady area of magic, only one step removed from taking over the will of another mortal. According to the White Council, 7 laws of magic, that's a capital crime, and they make the zero-tolerance policies look positively lenient. Given how much the council loves me, I'm a tad paranoid about breaking the laws of magic, so while I was calling the fairy's name, I put only the tiniest trickle of compulsion into it. Just enough to attract his unconscious attention to make him curious about what might be down this particular alley. I whispered the fairy's name and stood in the shadows, waiting. Maybe 10 minutes later, something made from a hummingbird and a falling star spiraled down from overhead, a flickering ball of blue-white light. It alighted on the ground, and light dimming to an almost luminous sheen over the form of a tiny fairy. Toot Toot. Toot stood about 6 inches tall. He had mane of dandelion fluff, hair the color of lilacs, and a pair of translucent dragonfly wings rising from his shoulders. Otherwise, he looked almost human. His beauty a distant echo of the Lords of Fairy, the She. On his head he wore what looked like a plastic Coke bottle cap. It was tied into place with a piece of string that ran under his chin, and his lilac hair squeezed out from beneath it all the way around, all but hiding his eyes. In one hand he carried a spear fashioned from a battered old yellow number 2 pencil, some twine, and what might have been a straight pin, and he wore a little blue plastic cocktail sword with another piece of twine on his belt. Toot landed in a cautious crouch near the pizza as though streaking in like an errant shot from a Roman candle might not have alerted anyone. Toot landed in a cautious crouch near the pizza as though streaking in like an errant shot from a Roman candle might not have alerted anyone to watching his presence. He tiptoed in a big circle around the piece of pizza and made a show of looking all around. One hand lifted to shade his eyes, then he raised his arm into the air, balled up a tiny fist, and pumped it up and down a few times. Immediately, half a dozen similar streaks of glowing color darted out of the air, each one a different color, each one containing a tiny fairy at its center. They alighted more or less together, and every one of them was armed with a weapon they might have cobbled together from the contents of a child's school box. Caption, tooted Toot Toot piped in a shrill voice. Report! A green-lit fairy beside Toot leapt to attention and slapped herself on the forehead with one hand, then turned sharply to her left and barked, Lieutenant, report! A purple-hued fairy came to attention as well and smacked himself in the head with one hand and turned to the next fairy beside him and snapped, Jump, report! And so it went down the line through Corpse Oral, the first-class privy, and finally the second-class privy, who marched up Toot Toot and said, It's here, generous, and we're hungry. All right, Toot Toot barked. Everyone fall apart for Missy. And with that, the fairies let out shrill hoots of glee, tossed aside their weapons and armaments, and threw themselves upon a piece of pizza. As soon as the little fairies started eating, the magic circle snapped closed around with a hardly audible pop as it sprang into place. The effect was immediate. The fairies let out a half a dozen piercing shrieks of alarm and buzzed into the air, smacking into the visible wall of the circle here and there, sending out puffs of glowing dust motes as they did. They fell into a panic spiral around the inside of the circle until Toot Toot landed on the ground, looked up at the other fairies and started shouting, 10 hits! 10 hits! The other fairies abruptly came to a complete stop in the air, staying rigidly straight. Evidently, they couldn't do that and keep their little wings going at the same time, because they promptly all fell to the valley floor, landing with a half dozen separate ouches and as many puffs as glowing fairy dust. Toot Toot recovered his pencil spear and stood at the very edge of the closed circle, peering out into the alley. Harry Dresden, is that you? I stepped out from my hiding spot and nodded. It's me. How you doing, Toot? I expected a torrent of outraged but empty threats. That was Toot Toot's usual procedure. Instead, he let out a hiss and crouched down in the circle, spear at the ready. The other tiny fairies took up their own weapons and rushed to Toot Toot's side. You can't make us, Toot said. We haven't been called, and until we are, we belong to ourselves. I blinked down at him. Called? Toot, what are you talking about? We're not stupid, emissary, Toot Toot said. I know what you are. I can smell the cold queen all over you. I wondered if they made a deodorant for that. I lifted my hand in a placating gesture. Toot, I'm working for Mab right now, but it's just another client, okay? I'm not here to take you anywhere or make you do anything. Toot planted the eraser end of his spear on the ground, scowling suspiciously up at me. Really? He demanded. Really, I said. Promise? Promise. Super duper double dog promise, spit and swear? I nodded. Super duper double dog promise, spit, swear, I repeated gravely. Spit! Toot demanded. I spat on the ground. Roll then, Toot said. He dropped his spear and darted toward the pizza, much to the consternation of the other little fairies, who let out piping shrills of protest and then followed him. The piece of pizza didn't last long. It was like watching one of those nature shows where the piranha devours some luckless thing that falls in the water. Except here and there were glittering wings and motes and puffs of glowing, colorful dust everywhere. I watched, frowning, until Toot Toot flopped on his back, his tummy slightly distended. He let out a contented sigh, and the other fairies followed suit. Harry, Toot said, what do you think is going to win the war? The White Council, I said. The Red Court's got no depth on the bench and nothing in the bullpen. Toot snorted and flipped his back plastic bottle cap helm off his head. His hair waved around in the breeze. Just because they don't have any cows doesn't mean they won't win, but I don't mean that war. I frowned. You mean between the courts? Toot nodded. Yeah. Okay, what's with the armor and weapons, Toot? The fairy being, neat, huh? Highly scary, I said gravely. But why do you have them? Toot folded his arms and said with all the gravity that 6 inches of fluff and pixie dust can muster. Trouble's coming. I hear the courts are upset. More than just upset, Harry Dresden. The drawing of the wild face is beginning. I saw some dryads walking with a she-knight from the summer, and a canal nereid climbed up out of the water a couple of blocks over and went into a winter building. Drawing of the wild fae, like you guys? Toot nodded and prodded his feet up on the legs of the star jump, who let out a surprisingly basso belch. Not everyone plays with the courts. We mostly just do our jobs and don't pay much attention. But when there's a war going on, the wild fae get called to one side or another. Who picks which way you go? Toot shrugged. Mostly the nice wild fae go to the warm queen and the mean ones go to the cold. I think it's got something to do with what you've been doing. So have you been doing warm or cold things? Toot let out a sparkling laugh. Should I remember all those things? He patted his stomach and then rose to his feet. Again, eyes calculating. Is that a pizza box you have there, Harry? I held the box out and opened it, showing the rest of the pizza. There was a collective "whoa" from the fairies, and they all pressed to the very edge of the circle until it flattened their little noses, staring at the pizza with fascinated lust. You sure have given us a lot of pizza in the past couple years, Harry, said with a swallow. He didn't look away from the box in my hands. Hey, you gave me a hand when I needed it. I said, it's only fair, right? Only fair? Toot spat out. It's pizza, Harry. I'm wanting some more work done. I said, I need information. And you're paying in pizza? Toot asked his hopeful. Yes, I said. Toot shouted, buzzing the air in a silent spiral. The other fairies followed him with similar carols of happiness, and the blurs of colors were dizzying. Give us the pizza! Toot shouted. Pizza, pizza, pizza! That's when it came out like sound like Pikachu, my bad. The other fairy shrilled. First, I said, I want some questions answered. Right. Toot screamed. Ask already. I need to talk to the winter lady, I said. Where can I find her, Toot? Toot toward his lavender hair. Is that all you needed to know? Down in the city, down where the shops are underground, and the sidewalks. I frowned. In the commuter tunnels? Yes. Back in part of the mortals can't see. You can find your way into Undertown. The cult lady came to Undertown. Her court is in Undertown. Doing Toot's voice is killing me. What? I spurred since when? Toot whirled impatient loops in the air. Since last autumn. I scratched at my hair. It made sense, I suppose. Last autumn, a vengeful vampire and her allies had stirred up all sorts of supernatural mischief, creating turbulence in the border between the real world and the never-never. The world of spirit, shortly after the war between wizards and the vampires had begun, those events had probably attracted the attention of all sorts of things. I shook my hand. What about the summer lady? Is she in town? Toot put his fists on the hips. Well, obviously, Harry. If winter came here, summer had to come too, didn't it? Obviously, I said, feeling a little slow on the uptake. Man, was I off my game. Where can I find her? She's on top of one of those big buildings. Toot, this is Chicago. There are a lot of big buildings. Toot blinked at me, then frowned for a minute before brightening. It's the one with the pizza shop right by it. If he only knew, right? My head hurts some more. Tell you what, how about you guide me to it? Toot thrust out his little chin and scoffed. Or Miss Pizza? No way. I gritted my teeth. Then get me someone else to guide me. You've got to know someone. Toot scrunched up his face. He tugged at one earlobe, but evidently it didn't help him remember because he had to run one foot against the opposite calf and spin around in vacant circles for 10 whole seconds before he rolled back to face me, the nimbus of light around him brightening. Ah, he sang. He give you a guide. He jabbed at Fingerbeat. But only if that's all the questions, Harry. Pizza, pizza, pizza. Guide first, I insisted, then pizza. Toot shook his arms and legs as though he would fly apart. Yes. Done, I said, and opened the pizza box and set it on top of the discarded crate nearby. Then I stepped over the circle, leaned down with a smudge of my hand, and an effort of will broke it, freeing the energies inside. The fairies chorused in several pitches and variants of yoo-hoo as shrieked past me so quickly they left a cone of wild air behind them, tossing my unruly hair and scattering louder pieces of garbage around the alley. They tore into the pizza with as much the same gusto as they used on the one piece earlier. But there was enough of it now to keep them from mangling it in mere seconds. Toot zipped over to hover in front of my face and held out his little palm. A moment later, something that looked like an errant spark from a campfire whirled down and lighted on his palm. Toot said something in language I couldn't understand, and the tiny light pulsed and flickered as though in response. Right, Toot said, nodding to the light. I peered more closely to it, and just barely I could make a tiny form inside, no larger than an ant, another fairy. The light pulsed and flickered, and Toot nodded to it before it turned to me. Harry Dresden? Toot said, holding out his palm. This is Elodie. She's going to pay me back a favor and guide you to the winter lady and then to the summer lady. Good enough? I frowned at the tiny fairy. Does she understand me? I barely saw Elodie stamp a tiny foot. The scarlet light around her flickered sharply twice. Yes. Toot trembled. 2 lights for yes, 1 light for no. River, chill. Sorry about that, guys. Two for yes, 1 for no, I muttered. Toot front. Or is that 1 for yes and 2 for no? I can never keep it straight. And with that, the little fairy blurred and zipped past me and away to join the swarm of softly flashing lights demolishing the pizza. Elodie, for her part, recovered from the miniature cyclone that Toot Toot left in his wake, whirled around dizzily for a few moments, and spiraled down to me and settled on the bridge of my nose. My eyes crossed, trying to look at her. Hey, I said, do I look like a couch to you? 2 flashes. I sighed. Okay, Elodie. Do you want any pizza before we go? 2 flashes again, brighter. The tiny fairy lifted in the air again and zoomed over to the cloud around the pizza. Footsteps came down the alley, and Billy stepped out of the shadows, pulling on his sweatshirt down over his muscular stomach. I felt a brief and irrational surge of jealousy that I don't have a muscular stomach. I'm not overlapping my belt or anything, but I don't have abs of steel. I don't even have abs of bronze. Maybe abs of plastic. Billy blinked at the pizza for a moment and then said, Wow, that's sort of pretty in a Jaws kind of way. Yeah, I said, don't look at it for too long. Fairy lights can be disorienting to mortals. Gotcha. Billy said. He glanced back at me. How'd it go? You get what you needed? Yeah, I said, you? He shrugged. Alley isn't the best place to pick up scents, but I should be able to recognize them again if I'm in my other suit. They didn't smell quite normal. Gee, what are the odds? Billy's teeth showed in the dark. So what are we waiting for? Elodie picked just then to glide back over to me and settle once more on the bridge of my nose. Billy blinked at her and said, What the hell? This is our guide, I said. Elodie, this is Billy. Elodie flashed twice. Billy blinked. Charmed. He shook his head. So, what's the plan? We go confront the Winter Lady in her underground lair. I do the talking, you stay alert and watch my back. He nodded. Okay, you got it. I looked over to see the last piece of pizza lifted up into the air by greedy fairy hands. They clustered around it, tearing and ripping, and it was gone in seconds. With that, the fairies swarmed away like a squadron of pot-bellied comets and vanished from view. Elodie fluttered off my nose and started drifting down the alley in the other direction. I followed her. Harry, Billy asked, his voice a touch hopeful, are you expecting trouble? I sighed and rubbed the space between my eyebrows. Definitely getting a headache. This is going to be a long night. Apparently, we're going to have an ad break in less than a minute, so I'm going to pause right there for the cause and see how much more. I'm probably not going to do a full 2 hours today since I did get started late. So I'm thinking I'm going to probably do at least, let's see, forget how many chapters do we have in this book? A lot. 34. And we're at 14, so I have 20 chapters left. Okay. What I'm probably going to try to do is try to get at least to chapter 20, if that. Or at least do another 30 minutes of reading, whichever comes first. It's not going to be a full 2 hours today. But we do have a lot of ground to cover, and I'm so sorry that I've been waylaid every Wednesday, apparently. But we will have, and I apologize to those of you tuning in on the YouTube of Tubes for the brief delay in the reading. I don't want anybody to miss out on anything, therefore, that's pretty good hefty chunk there. I was just kind of looking it over. While we took an ad break, I'm going to take a quick pause for the cause and just kind of chill back for a second. That was just probably the game du jour today will be Streamlight Valley because I have some catching up to do when it comes to the Star Path, and apparently, let me, hold on. Actually, while I'm thinking about it, let me make sure I don't have any kind of updates while we're waiting. Well, we do have that still, unfortunately. Well, that's Mariah Carey and Boyz II Men. That's the trivia question that Simon asked. Not what I expected to update, but okay. Apparently, Neverwinter's been going through a lot of See if these were saying that it's going to take like 8 hours a day. So I'm like, yikers. So I thought that Disney had dropped some more stuff, and I didn't. That Dreamlight Valley had dropped some more stuff, and sadly it had not. And I picked up the oddest game for a very cheap price. I actually spent a whole dollar and picked up, technically a second copy of Fallout New Vegas. I do have it on Epic. I do believe it's either Epic or GOG. But I picked it up on Steam for a dollar. So if anybody's interested in getting new, Fallout New Vegas fairly cheap on PC, better check that sale out before it gets over with. I think it's over with. I think it's Thursday. I think or tomorrow. I think it is. So there's some pretty good games for pretty cheap. I was kind of upset about some of it because there's a few of those games that's on my wish list that actually end up being pretty cheap, and I'm just like, wish I could. Also, to Friday, I'm going to do something different, but I'm not going to tell y'all what it is yet when I stream because we'll just see. What, pray tell, do I have up my sleeve? I was actually shifting the updates to where I should go first. Now, apparently they're updating DCU, which is unusual. DCU DC Online for those of you uninitiated people. We'll be getting back to the reading in just a moment. We got another couple of, we got the ad break is now over, so we will begin at the beginning yet again. Chapter 14. Elodie led Billy and me through alleys, up a fire escape to the roof of a building, then down to the other side, and through a junk-cluttered abandoned lot on the way to Pedway. It took us better than half an hour scrambling after the tiny ferry through the muggy heat, and by the end of it I wished I'd told Toot Toot that we wanted someone who could read a street map and guide us there in a car. Chicago's commuter tunnels are fairly recent construction compared to much of the rest of the city. The tunnels are a maze if you don't know them. Long stretches of identical overhead lights, drab, clean walls dotted with advertising posters and intersections bearing plain and not always helpful directional signs. The tunnels closed after the workday and would open up again until around 6 the next morning, but Elodie led us to an unfinished building at Randolph and Wabash. She lit around in front of the service access door that proved to be unlocked and that led down to a similar door that opened onto a darkened section of the Pedway that looked as though it had been under construction but was abandoned when the building had been shut down. It was completely dark, so I slipped the silver pinnacle off my neck, lifting it in my hand, focusing a quiet effort of will upon it. The five-pointed star had been a symbol of magic for centuries, representing the four elements of the power of spirit bound within a circle of will. Primal power under the control of human thought. I held the pinnacle before me, and as I concentrated, it began to glow with a gentle blue light, illuminating enough of our surroundings that we could navigate through the dark, silent tunnels. The little ferry drifted off in front of us down the tunnel, and we followed her without speaking. She took us to the intersection of the main tunnels of the Pedway and a brief walk down another tunnel to a section behind a rusting metal gate with a sign that read, "Danger, keep out." The gate proved to be unlocked, and we went down the tunnel to a damper section of tunnels, rife with the smell of mold, which was clearly not a part of the Pedway proper. After another 50 or 60 feet, we reached a place where the walls became rough and uneven, shadows lay thick and heavy despite the glow of my wizard's light. Elodie drifted over to an especially dark section of wall and flew in a little circle in front of it. "Okay," I said, "I guess this is where we get in." "What is where we get in?" Billy asked his voice skeptical. "Get into where?" "Undertown," I said. I ran my hands over the wall. To the casual touch, it appeared to be a bare, unfinished concrete, but I felt a slight unsteadiness when I pressed against it. It couldn't have been solid stone. Must be a panel here somewhere, a trigger of some kind. "What do you mean, Undertown? I've never heard of it before." I was probably working here for 5 or 6 years before I did," I said. "You have to understand this history of Chicago, how they did things here." Billy folded his arms. "I'm listening." "The city is a swamp," I said, still searching for a means of opening it with my fingertips. "We're darn near level with Lake Michigan. When they first built the place, the town kept sinking into the muck. I mean, every year it sank lower. They used to build streets and then build a latticework of wood over them, and then yet another street on top of that, planning on them slowly sinking. They planned houses the same way. Built the front door on the second floor and called it a Chicago entry, and so when the house sank, the front door would be at ground level. I'll have to ask Pingu about this. So what about when the street sank? Built another one on top of it, so you wound up with a whole city existing under the street level. They used to have a huge problem with rats and criminals holding up under the streets. But not anymore, Billy asked. The rats and thugs mostly got crowded out by other things. Became a whole miniature civilization down here, and it was out of sight of the sun, which made a friendly space for all the night-crawling critters around. Hence, Undertown, Billy said. I nodded. Undertown. There are a lot of tunnels around Chicago. The Manhattan Project was housed in them for a while during World War II. Did all that atomic bomb research. Oh, that's cheerful. You come down here a lot? I shook my head. Hell no. All kinds of nastiness lives down here. Billy frowned at me. Like what? Like lots of things. Stuff you don't often see on the surface. Things that even wizards know almost nothing about. Goblins, spirits of the earth, worms, and W-Y-R-M-S, not W-O-R-M-S. Things that have no name, plus the usual riffraff. Vampires sometimes find lairs down here during the day. Trolls can hide here too. Molds and fungi you don't get in most of the natural world. You name it. Billy pursed his lips thoughtfully. So you're taking us into a maze of lightless, rotting, precarious tunnels full of evil fairies and monsters. I nodded. Maybe leftover radiation too. God, you're a fun guy, Harry. Hey, you're the one who wanted in on the action. My fingers found a tiny groove in the wall when I pressed it against it. A small flat section of stone clicked and retracted. The switch had to have triggered some kind of release because the section of the wall pivoted in the center, turning outward and forming a door that led to still more dank darkness. Ha! I said with some satisfaction. There we go. Billy pressed forward and tried to step through the door, but I put a hand on his shoulder and stopped him. Hang on. There are some things you need to know. Billy frowned, but he stopped listening. These are fairies. We'll probably run into a lot of the Sidhe. They're nobles hanging out with the Winter Lady. That means that they're going to be dangerous and will probably try to entrap you. What do you mean entrap me? Billy said. Bargains, I said. Deals. They'll try to offer you things, get you to trade one thing for another. Why? I shook my head. I don't know. It's in their nature. The concept of debt and obligation is a huge factor of how they behave. Billy lifted his eyebrows. That's why that little guy worked for you, right? Because he owed you for the pizza and he had a debt to you. Right, I said. But it can work both ways. If you owe them something, they have a conduit to you and you can use magic against you. The basic rule is not to accept any gifts from them. And for God's sake, don't offer them any gifts. They find anything other than an equal exchange to be either enticing or insulting. It isn't a big deal with little guys like Toot, but if you get into it with a she-lord, you might not live through it. Billy shrugged. Okay, no gifts, dangerous fairies. Got it. I'm not finished. They aren't going to be offering you wrapped packages, man. They're the Sidhe. They're some of the most beautiful creatures there are, and they'll try to put you off balance and tempt you. Tempt you, like with sex? Is that what you're saying? Like any kind of sensual indulgence. Sex, food, beauty, music, perfume. When they offer, don't accept it, or you'll be opening yourself up to a world of hurt. Billy nodded. Okay, got it. Let's go already. I eyed the younger man. He gave me an impatient look. I shook my head. I don't think I could have adequately conveyed the kind of danger we might be walking into with mere words in any case. I took a deep breath and nodded to Elodie. All right, Tinkerbell, let's go. The tiny scarlet light gave an irritated bob and then darted through the concealed doorway into the darkness beyond. Billy's eyes narrowed and followed it. Billy narrowed his eyes and followed it, and I went after him. We found ourselves in a tunnel where one wall seemed to be made of ancient moldering brick and the other of a mixture of rotting wooden beams, loose earth, and winding roots. The tunnel ran on out of the circle of light from my amulet. Our guide drifted forward and we set out to follow her, walking close together. The tunnel gave way to a sort of low-roofed cavern, supported here and there by pillars, mounds of collapsed earth, and beams that looked like they'd been added in afterward by the dwellers in Undertown. Elodie circled the place a bit uncertainly, then started floating to the right. I hadn't been following the little fairy for 5 seconds before the skin on the back of my neck started to crawl up over my head and hide my mouth. I drew it short, and I must have made some kind of noise, because Billy shot a look back at me and asked, Harry, what is it? I lifted my hand to silence him and peered into the darkness around me. Keep your eyes open, I said. I don't think we're alone. From the shadows outside the light came a low hissing sound. The rest of my skin erupted in goose flesh, and I shook my shield bracelet clear. I lifted my voice and said clearly, I am the wizard Dresden, emissary of the Winter Court, bound to pay call upon the Winter Lady. I've no time or desire to fight. Stand clear and let me pass. A voice that sounded like a tortured cat might, if some demented being gave it the gift of speech, muled out of the shadows, grating on my ears. We know who you are, wizard. the voice said. Its inflections were all wrong, and the tone seemed to come from not far above the ground, somewhere off to my right. Elodie let out a high-pitched shriek of terror and zipped back to me, diving into my hair. I felt the warmth of the light around the tiny fairy like a patch of sunlight on my scalp. I traded a look with Billy and turned toward the source of the voice. Who are you? A servant of the Winter Lady, the voice replied from directly behind me, sent here to guide you safely through this realm and to her court. I turned in the other direction and peered more closely to the sound of the voice. The wear light from my amulet suddenly gleamed off a pair of animal eyes 20 feet away and a few inches from the floor. I looked back at Billy. He'd already noted the eyes and turned back to put his back to mine, watching the darkness behind us. I turned back to the speaker and said, I ask again, who are you? The eyes shifted in place, the voice letting out an angry, growling sound. Many names have I been called, and many paths I have trod. Hunter I have been, and watcher and guide. My lady sent me to bring you thither, safe and whole and well. Don't get mad at me, Charlie, I snapped. You know the drill as well as I do. Thrice I ask and done. Who are you? The voice came out harsh and sullen, barely intelligible. Grimalkin, I am called by the cold lady who bids me guide her mother's emissary with safe conduct to her court and her throne. And I say that's a little bit of a name right there. For those of you that don't know, this is it's not quite an Easter egg so much, but the Xavier School for Gifted Mutants was on Grey Malkin Lane. Here's a little something. Let's see. Let's see if I can. Wow, I cannot spell today. Now see, there is basically a Grimalkin is a cat. Big cat, big kitty. It has also been referred to as, there's also been a person, there's also been a mutant in the X-Men universe known as Grimalkin, Jonas Grimalkin, but also the School for Gifted Mutants was also on that street as well. Grimalkin mythology, let's narrow it down. A Grimalkin or Greymalkin is a figure in European folklore, primarily Scottish, representing a supernatural grey cat often associated with witchcraft, fairies, and the devil. Historically used as a term for old grey domestic cat, the term evolved to represent a cat's fairy cat, or which is familiar, capable of shape-shifting and possessing night lives. Basically, under that translation, technically, Anubis is a Grimalkin. Although I've never seen him shapeshift, which would be kind of interesting. Anyway. I let out a breath. All right, I said, so lead us. The eyes bobbed in place as though in a small bow, and Grimalkin mewled again, and it was a faint motion in the shadows outside my light. Then a dull greenish glow appeared upon the ground. I stepped toward it and found a faint luminous footprint upon the ground, a vague paw, feline but too spread out and too thin to be an actual cat's. Just as I reached it, another light appeared on the floor several feet away. Make haste, wizard, mewled Grimalkin's voice. Make haste. The lady awaits, the season passes, time is short. I moved toward the second footprint, and as I reached it, a third appeared before us in the dark, and so on. What was all that about? Billy murmured, asking it the same thing 3 times. I mean, it's a binding, I murmured, replied. Fairies aren't allowed to speak a lie. And if a fairy says something 3 times, it has to make sure that it's true. It's bound to fulfill a promise spoken thrice. Ah, Billy said, so even if this thing hadn't actually been sent to guide us safely, you made him say so 3 times would mean he'd be obligated to do it. Got it. I shook my head. I wanted to make sure Grimalkin was on the level, but I hate being bound like that. From ahead of us, the faintly glowing eyes appeared briefly, accompanied by another mewling growl that sent a chill down my spine. Oh, Billy said. He didn't look any too calm himself. His face had gone a little pale, and he walked with his hands clenched into fists. So, if Grimalkin had good intentions to begin with, wouldn't that make him angry that you needlessly bound him? I shrugged. I'm not here to make friends, Billy. I'm here to find a killer. You've never heard of diplomacy, have you? We followed the trail of footprints on the ground for another 20 minutes or so through damp tunnels, sometimes only a few feet high. More sections of the tunnel showed evidence of recent construction, if you could call swirling layers of stone that seemed to have been smoothed into place like soft serve ice cream construction. We passed several tunnels that seemed to be entirely new. Whatever beings lived down here, they didn't seem to be too shy about expanding. How much further? I asked him. Grimalkin let out a growling sound from somewhere nearby, not in the direction of the next footprint either. Very near, noble emissary, very near now. The unseen fairy guide was good to its word. As the next glowing footprint, no other appeared. Instead, we came to a large, elaborately carved double doorway. Made of some black wood I could not identify. The doors were 8 or 9 feet high, and the carved and rich bas relief. At first, I thought the carvings were a garden theme, leaves, vines, flowers, fruit, that kind of thing, but as I walked closer, the door I could see more detail in the light of my glowing amulet. The forms of people lay among the vines, some sprawled amorously together, while others were nothing more than skeletons wrapped in creeping roses, or corpses staring with sightless eyes from the bed within a bed of poppies. Here and there in the garden, one could see the evidence of the she, a pair of eyes, a veiled figure, and the hangers on little fairies like Toot Toot, leaf-clad dryads, pipe-wielding satyrs, and many, many others hiding from the mortal's views dancing. Nice digs, Billy commented. Is this the place? I glanced around for our guide, but didn't see any more footprints or feline eyes. I guess it must be. They aren't exactly subtle, are they? Summer's better at it than winter, but they can all be when it suits them. Uh-huh. You know what bothers me, Harry? What? Grimalkin never said he'd guide us out again. I glanced back at Billy. Quiet, hissing laughter came out of the darkness, directionless. I took a deep breath. Steady, Harry. Don't let the kids see you get nervous. Then I turned to the door and struck it solidly with my fist 3 times. The blows rang out hollow and booming. Silence fell in the tunnels for a long moment until the door split down the middle and then let out from behind them a flood of light and sound and color. I don't know what I'd expected from the winter court, but it wasn't big band music. A large brass section blared from somewhere behind the doors, and drums rattled and pounded with the rough, genuine sound of actual skins. The lights were colored and muted, as if the whole place was lit by Christmas strands, and I could see shadows whirling and moving inside. Dancers. Careful, I muttered. Don't let the music get to you. I stepped up to the great doors and passed through them. The room could have come from a roaring 20s hotel. Hell, it might have been if the hotel had sunk into the earth, turned slightly upon its side, and had been decorated by things with no concept of human values. Whatever it once been had always been meant for dancing. The dance floor was made of blocks of rose-colored marble, and even though the floor was tilted, the blocks had been slipped to the level here and there, creating something that looked like a flight of low, shallow stairs. Over the treacherous blocks danced the winter she. Beautiful didn't come close. It didn't start to come close. Men and women danced together, dressed in regalia of the 1940s, stockings, knee-length skirts, dress uniforms of both the Army and the Navy that looked as authentic to the month and year. The hairstyles and evidence corresponded as well, though the color didn't always match the setting. One she-girl I saw wore hers dyed sapphire blue, another wore braids of silver and gold, and of other colors. Here and there, a light gleamed from metal or gems set into ears, brows, lips, and the riot of subtle colors gathered around each other. Each and every dancer in its own distinct, fascinating nimbus, a corona energy, a power manifesting itself as she danced. Even without the whirling artists, the way they moved was something hypnotic in itself, and I had to force my eyes away from it only after a few seconds of lovely legs being displayed as the woman spun, body arched back underneath a strong man's hands, throats bared and breasts offered out as the hair-caught gleam of the colored lights that threw it back in waves of color. I couldn't look anywhere on the dance floor without seeing someone who should have been making fun of people on the covers of magazines for being too ugly. Billy hadn't been as paranoid as me, and he stood staring at the dance floor, his eyes wide. I nudged him with my hip, hard enough to make his teeth clack together, and he jerked and gave me a guilty look. I forced my eyes away from the dancers, maybe 20 couples all told, to check out the rest of the ballroom. To one side of the room stood a bandstand, and the musicians on it all wore tuxes. They were mortals, human. They looked normal, which was to say almost deformed in comparison to the dancers that performed for her. Both men and women played. None of them looked well rested or fed. Their tuxes were stained with sweat, and their hair hung lank and unwashed. A closer look showed the silver manacle bound around the ankle of each of them, attached to a chain that ran through the bandstand, winding back and forth among them. They didn't look upset, though. Far from it. Everyone was bent to the music, faces locked in intensity and concentration, and they were good, playing with unity and tone and timing that you only see from bands who have really honed their art. That didn't change the fact that they were prisoners of the Fae. But they evidently had no particular problems with the notion. The music rattled the great stone room, shaking dust from the ceiling hidden in the darkness overhead while she danced. Opposite the bandstand, the dance floor descended directly into a pool of water, what I presumed was water at any rate. It looked black and unnaturally still. Even as I watched, the water stirred and moved by something out of sight beneath the surface. Color rolled and ripped on the dark surface, and I got the distinct impression that the pool wasn't water, not just water. I fought down another shiver. Beyond the dance floor on the side of the room opposite me stood raised tiers of platforms, each one set with a separate little table, one that could sit 3 or 4 at the most, each one with its own dim green-shaded lamp. The tables all stood in different relative heights to one another, staggered back and forth until the tiers reached a pinnacle, a single chair made out of what looked like silver, its flaring back carved into a sigil, a snowflake the size of a dinner table. The great chair stood empty. The drummer on the bandstand went to a brief solo, and the instruments cut off altogether, but for one. The other band members sagged to their seats. A couple of them simply collapsed into the floor, but the lead trumpet stayed standing, belting out a solo while the Winter Lords danced. He was a middle-aged man, a little overweight, his face flushed scarlet, then purple as his trumpet rang through the solo. Then all at once the she stopped dancing. Dozens of beautiful faces turned to watch the soloist, eyes glittering in the muted light. The man continued to play, but I could see that something was wrong. The flush of his face deepened even more, and the veins began to throb in his forehead and throat. His eyes widened and began to bulge, and he started shaking. A moment later, the music began to falter. The man tore his face away from the trumpet, and I could see him gasping for breath. He couldn't get it. A second later, he jerked and stiffened, his eyes rolled up in his head. The trumpet slipped from his fingers, and he fell first to his knees, then limply over to his side to the floor of the bandstand. He hit with finality. His eyes opened but not focused. He twitched once more, and his throat rattled, and he was still. A murmur went through the sheet, and I looked back to see them parting, stepping aside with deep bows and curtsies for someone emerging from their midst. A tall girl walked slowly toward the fallen musician. Her features were pale, radiant, and perfect, and looked like an adolescent copy of Mom's. That was where the resemblance ended. She looked young enough to make a man feel guilty for thinking wrong thoughts, but old enough to make it difficult not to. Her hair had been bound with long dreadlocks, each of them dyed a different shade, ranging from a deep lavender of pale blues and greens to pure white, so that it almost seemed as if her hair had been formed from glacial ice. She wore leather pants of dark blue, laced up and opened the outside seams from calf to hip. Her boots matched the pants. She wore a white t-shirt tight enough to show things, straining against the fabric, framing the words off with his head. She had hacked the shirt off at the top of her rib cage, leaving pale flesh exposed, along with a glitter of silver flashing in her navel. She moved to the down musician with liquid grace, a thoughtless casual sensuality that made quiver slip down my spine. She settled down over him, throwing a leg over his hip, straddling him, and idly raked long opalescent fingernails over his chest. He didn't move, didn't breathe. The girl licked her lips, her mouth spreading into a lazy smile before she leaned down and kissed the corpse's dead lips. I saw her shiver with what was unmistakably pleasure. There, she murmured. There, you see. Never let it be said that the Lady Maeve does not fulfill her promises. You said you'd die to play that well, poor creature, and now you have. A collective sigh went up from the assembled she, and they began applauding enthusiastically. Maeve looked back over her shoulder at them all with a lifted chin and lazy smile before she stood up, bowed left and right to the sound of the applause. The applause died off, and Maeve stalked away from the corpse into the raising tiers of dinner seats, stepping lightly up to them until she reached the great silver throne at the top. She dropped into it, turned sideways, and idly threw her legs over one arm, arcing her back and stretching with that same lazy smile. My lords and ladies, let us give our poor musical brutes a little time to recover their strength. We have a visitor. The she began drifting toward the tables on the tiers, stepping into place one by one. I stood where I was and said nothing, though that as they settled down, I became increasingly conscious of their attention, of the glittering intensity of immortal eyes upon me. Once they had all settled in, I stepped forward and walked across the dance floor until I stood in front of the tier. I looked up at Maeve and inclined my head to her. Lady Winter, I presume? Maeve smiled at me, showing a dimple, and gave one foot a girlish bounce. Indeed. You know in what capacity I'm here, lady? Naturally. I nodded, nothing like a frontal assault then. Did you arrange the murder of the summer night? Silence fell into the room. The regard of the winter she grew more intent, more uncomfortable. Maeve's mouth spread into a slow smile, which in turn became a quiet, rolling laugh. She let her head fall back with it, and she joined in with her. They sat there laughing at me for a good 30 seconds, and I felt my face begin to heat up with irrational embarrassment. Before Maeve waved one hand in a negligent gesture, and the laughter obediently died away. Stars, she murmured. I adore mortals. I clenched my jaw. That's swell, I said. Did you arrange the murder of the summer night? If I had, do you really think I would tell you? You're evading, I growled. Answer the question. Maeve lifted a fingertip to her lips as though she needed to hold in more laughter. Then she smiled and said, I can't just give you that kind of information, Wizard Dresden. It's too powerful. What is that supposed to mean? She sat up, crossing her legs with a squeak of leather, and settled back on the throne. It means that if you want me to answer that question, you'll have to pay for it. What is the answer worth to you? I folded my arms. I assume you have something in mind. That's why you went and sent someone to give us safe passage here. Quick, she murmured. I like that. Yes, I do, Wizard. She extended a hand to me and gestured to an open seat at the table on the right and a little beneath the level of her throne. Please sit down, she said, her teeth shone white. Let's make a deal. See, that was one thing he told Billy not to do. Chapter 15. You want me to cut another deal with a she, I said. I didn't bother to hide my disbelief. When I burst out laughing at you, do you think you'll be offended? And why should you find the notion amusing? I rolled my eyes. Christ, lady, that's what's got me into this crap to begin with. Maeve's lips slithered into a quiet smile. She left her hand extended toward the seat beside her. Remember, Wizard, that you came to seek something from me. Surely it would not harm you to listen to my offer. I've heard that before, usually right before I get screwed. Maeve touched the tip of her tongue to her lips. One thing at a time, Mr. Dresden. I snorted. Suppose I don't want to listen. Something in her eyes suddenly made her face cold and unpleasant. I think it might be wise for you to indulge me. I simply go mad when someone ruins a good party mood. Harry, Billy muttered, these people are giving me the creeps. If she's playing games with you, maybe we should go. I grimaced. Yeah, that would be the smart thing, but it wouldn't get me any answers. Come on. I stepped forward and started climbing up the table Maeve had indicated. Billy followed closely. Maeve watched me the whole time, her eyes sparkling. There, she said, once I'd been seated. Not so untamable as he claimed. I felt my jaw get a little tighter as Billy took a seat beside me. A trio of brightly colored lights zipped in, bearing a silver tray holding a crystalline ewer of water and 2 glasses. As who said? Maeve waved a hand airily. No matter. I glared at her, but she didn't seem bothered. All right, lady, I said, talk. Maeve idly stretched out a hand. A goblet with some golden liquid appeared in her fingers and rimmed over the frost as I watched. She took a sip of the drink, whatever it was, and said, First, I will name my price. There better be a blue light special, because I don't have much to trade, all things considered. True, I cannot ask for a claim over you because Queen Mab has that already, but let me see. She tapped her fingernail to her lips and again said, Your issue. Eh? I said glibly. Your issue, Wizard, she said, toying with a violent dreadlock. Your offspring, your firstborn, and in exchange I'll give you the knowledge you seek. Newsflash, Goldilocks, I don't have any kids. Maeve laughed. Naturally not, but the details could be arranged. Evidently that was a cue. The dark pool of maybe water stirred, drawing my eye. Ripples whispered as they lapped at the edges of the pool. What's that? Billy whispered to me. The waters parted and a she-girl rose out of the pool. She was tall, slender, water sliding down over pale, naked curves. Her hair was a deep shade of emerald green, and as she kept coming out of the water, walking up what were apparently submerged stairs, I could tell that it wasn't dyed. Her face was sweetly angelic, sort of girl next door pretty. Her hair clung to her head, her throat, her shoulders, as did beads of water that glistened and threw back the phthalites in dozens of colors. She extended her arms, and immediately half a dozen little lights, pixies, zipped out of nowhere, bearing a swath of emerald silk. They draped it over her extended arms, but the cloth served to emphasize rather than conceal her nakedness. She looked up at the tables with her feline fey eyes and inclined her head to Maeve. Then she focused upon me. There was an abrupt pulling sensation, something as simple and as difficult to resist as gravity. I felt a sudden urge to get up and go down to her, remove the silk cloth, and to carry her into the water. Basically, he got a little excited. Beside me, Billy gulped. Is it just me or is it getting a little warm in here? She's pushing it on you, I said quietly. My lips felt a little numb. It's glamour. It isn't real. Okay, Billy said with that conviction. It isn't real. He reached for a glass and a euro of water, but I grabbed his hand. No food, no drink. It's dangerous. Billy cleared his throat and settled back in his seat. Oh, right. Sorry. The girl glided up the tiers of tables, glittering pixies in dark tents around her, gathering her hair back off ornate combs, fastening gleaming jewels to her ears, lacing more about her throat, wrist, and ankle. I couldn't help but follow the motion of the lights, which took my eyes on a thorough tour of her body. The urge to go to her became even stronger as she neared, as I smelled her perfume, a scent like that of the mist hovering over a still lake beneath a harvest moon. The green-haired woman smiled, lips closed, and then drew a deep curtsy to Maeve and murmured, "My lady." Maeve reached out and took her hand warmly. "Jen," she murmured, "are you acquainted with the infamous Harry Dresden?" Jen smiled, and seaweed and her teeth gleamed between her lips. They were as green as seaweed, spinach, and freshly steamed broccoli. "Only by reputation." She turned to me and extended her hand, arching one verdant brow. I gave Billy a self-conscious glance and rose to take the she-lady's hand. I nudged Billy's foot with mine, and he stood up too. I bowed politely over Jen's hand. Her fingers were cool, damp, and I got the impression that her flawless skin should have been prune wrinkled, but it wasn't. I had to fight the urge to kiss the back of her hand, to taste her cool flesh. I managed to keep a neutral tone to my voice and said, "Good evening." The she-lady smiled at me, showing her green teeth again, and said, "Something of a gentleman. I wouldn't have expected it." She withdrew her hand and said, "And tall." Her eyes roamed over me in idle speculation. "I like tall men." I felt my cheeks flush and grow warmer. The other part suffered from similar inflammation. Maeve asked, "Is she lovely? Is she lovely enough to suit you, Wizard? You've no idea how many mortal men have longed for her, and how few have known her embrace." Jen let out a quiet laugh. "For more than 3 minutes, at any rate." Ooh, damn. That's kind of harsh. Mm. Mhm. She said that with her whole chest. Okay. Maeve drew Jen down until the nearly nude she-lady knelt Maeve drew Jen down until the nearly nude she-lady knelt beside the throne. Maeve toyed with a strand of her curling leaf green hair with one hand. "Why not agree to my offer, Wizard? Spend a night in the company of my maiden. Is it not a pleasant price?" My voice came out more quietly than I'd intended. "You want me to get a child on her, a child you would keep." Maeve's eyes glittered. She leaned toward me and said very quietly, "Do not let that concern you. I can feel your hunger, mortal man, the need in you, hot as fever. Let go for a time. No mortal could sate you as she will." I felt my eyes drawn to the she-woman, trailing down the length of pale flesh left bare between the idle drapes of emerald silk. Following the length of her legs, that hunger rose again in me, a raw and thinking need. Scent flooded over me, a perfume of wind and mist, of heated flesh. Scent invoked more phantom sensations of the silken caress of delicate fey hands, sweetly hot rake of nails, winding strength of limbs tangled with mine. Maeve's eyes brightened. "Perhaps she is not enough for you. Perhaps she would wish another, even myself." As I watched, Jen leaned her cheek against Maeve's thigh and placed a soft kiss upon the tight leather. Maeve shifted a slow, sensual motion of her hips and back, and murmured, "Or more, if your thirst runs deep enough. Drive a hard bargain, Wizard. All of us would enjoy that." The longing and aching force of naked need redoubled. The two fairies were lovely, more than lovely, sensuous, willing, perfectly unrestrained, perfectly passionate. I could feel that in them, radiating from them. If I made the bargain, they would make the evening one of nothing but indulgence, sensation, satiation, and delight. Maeve and her handmaid would do things to me that you'd only read about in magazines. "Dear Penthouse," I muttered, "I never thought something like this would happen to me." "Wizard," Maeve murmured, "I see you weighing the consequences in your eyes. You think too much. It weakens you. Stop thinking. Come down into the earth with us." Some mathematical and uncaring part of my brain, way the hell back of my head, reminded me that I did need that information. A simple statement from Maeve would tell me if she was this killer or not. Go ahead, tell me. So it's going to be painful for you to pay her price. I mean, don't you deserve to have something pleasant happen to you for a change? I mean, make the bargain, get the information, get wasted on kisses and pleasure and soft skin. Live a little before that borrowed time you're on runs out. I reached out with a shaking hand to the crystal ewer on the table. I clenched it. It clanked and rattled against the glass as I poured cool, sparkling water into it. May's smile grew sharper. Harry, Billy said, his voice uncertain, didn't you just say something bad about, taking food or drink from from these people? I put the pitcher down and picked up the glass of water. Jen rubbed her cheek against Maeve's thigh and murmured, they never really change, do they? No, Maeve said, the males all fall to the same thing. Isn't it delicious? I unbuttoned the fly in my jeans, undid the zipper a little, and dumped the cold water directly down into my pants. There's some people I actually know that it could benefit from that. Some shocks of sensation are pleasant. This one wasn't. The water was so cold that tiny chips of ice had formed in it, as though it were trying to freeze itself from the inside out. That cold went right down where I intended it to go, and everything in my jeans tried to contract into my abdomen in sheer hypothermic horror. I let out a yellow yelp, and my skin probably crawled with goose flesh. The gesture had its intended effect. That overwhelming, almost feral hunger withered and vanished. I was able to take my eyes off the winter lady and her handmaiden, declaring my thoughts into something resembling a sane line of reason. I shook my head a bit to be sure, and then looked up at Maeve. Anger surged through me, my jaw clenched tight, but I made an effort to keep my words at least marginally polite. Sorry, sweetie, but I have a couple of problems with that offer. Maeve's lips tightened, and those would be... One, I'm not handing over a child to you. Not mine, not anyone's, not now, not ever. If you had a brain in your head, you'd have known that. Maeve's already pale face blanched even more, and she sat bolt upright in her throat. You dare! Shut up! I snarled, and it came out loud enough to ring off the walls of the ballroom. I'm not finished! Maeve jerked as though I'd slapped her. Her mouth dropped open and she blinked at me. I came here under your invitation and protection. I'm your guest. But in spite of that, you've thrown glamour at me anyway. I stood up, my hands spread on the table, leaning forward toward her for emphasis. I don't have time for this crap. You don't scare me, lady, I said. I only came here for answers, but if you keep pushing me, I'm going to push back. Hard. Maeve's evident anger evaporated. She leaned back on her throne, lips pursed, her expression placid and enigmatic. Well. Not so easily captured, it would seem. A new voice, a relaxed masculine drawl slid into the silence. I told you, Maeve, you should have been polite. Anyone who declares war on the Red Court isn't going to be the sort to take kindly to pressure. The speaker stepped into the ballroom, through double doors, and walked casually to the banquet tables and toward Maeve's throne. It was a man maybe in his early 30s, medium build, maybe half an inch shy of 6 feet tall. He wore dark jeans, a white tee, and a leather jacket. Droplets of dark reddish-brown stained the shirt on one side of his face. His scalp was bald, but for a stubble of dark hair. As he approached, I picked up more details. He had a brand on his throat. A snowflake made of white scar tissue stood out sharply against the skin. The skin on one side of his face was red and a little swollen, and he was missing half of the eyebrow and a crescent on the stubble of his scalp on that side. He'd been burned, and recently. He reached the throne and dropped to one knee before it, somehow conveying a certain relaxed insolence with the gesture, and extended the box to Maeve. It is done, Maeve asked, almost childlike eagerness in her voice. What took you so long? It wasn't as easy as you said it'd be, but I did it. The winter lady all but snatched the carved box from his hands, avarice light in her eyes. Wizard, this is my knight, Lloyd, of the family Slate. Late onto me. How are you? Impatient, I responded, but I nodded back to him warily. You're the winter knight? So far, yeah. I guess you're the winter emissary, asking questions and investigating and so on. Yep. Did you kill Ronald well? Slate burst out laughing. Christ, Dresden, you don't waste time, do you? I filled my insincere courtesy quota for the day. I said, did you kill him? Slate shrugged and said, no, to be honest with you, I'm not sure I could have killed him. He's been at this a lot longer than me. He was an old man, I said. So are a lot of wizards, Slate pointed out. I could have bench pressed him, sure, but killing him is something else altogether. Maeve let out a sudden hiss of anger that sounded eerily loud. She lifted her foot and kicked Slate in the shoulder. Something popped when she did, and the force of the kick drove the winter knight down a tier into the table and the she seated there. The table toppled, and she, chairs, and knight went sprawling. Maeve rose to her feet, sending the green-toothed Jen scooting away from her. She drew what looked like a military-issued combo knife from a carved box. It was crusted with some kind of black gelatinous substance like burned barbecue sauce. You stupid animal, she snorted. Useless! This is useless to me! She hurled the knife at Slate. The handle hit him in the bicep of his left arm as he sat up again, his face twisted in sudden fury. He took up the knife, rose to his feet, and stalked toward Maeve with murder in his eye. Maeve drew herself up, her face shining with sudden terrible beauty. She lifted her right hand, ring finger and thumb, both bent, and murmured something in a liquid alien tongue. Suddenly blue light gathered around her fingers, and the temperature in the room dropped by about 40 degrees. She spoke again and flicked her wrist, sending glowing motes of azure flickering toward Slate. The snowflake brand flared in the sunlight. Slate's advance halted, his body going rigid. The skin around the brand turned blue, then purple, then black. Spread like stop motion enhanced film of gangrene. A quiet snarl slipped from Slate's lips, and I could see his body trembling with the effort to continue toward Maeve. He shuddered and took another step forward. Maeve lifted her other hand, her index finger extended, with the others curled. A sudden wind whipped past me, cold enough that it stole the breath from my lungs. The wind whipped madly around Slate, making his leather coat flap. Bits of white frost started forming on his eyelashes and eyebrows. His expression, now anguished as well as full of rage, faltered, and his advance halted again. Calm him, Maeve murmured. Jen slipped behind Slate, wrapping her arms about his neck, leaning her mouth down close to his ear. Slate's eyes flickered with hot, violent hate for a moment, then began to grow heavier. Jen ran her hand slowly around the sleeve of his jacket, fingers caressing his wrist. His arm lowered as I watched. A moment later, Jen slid the jacket from his shoulders. The tee was sleeveless, and Slate's arms were hard with muscle and tracked with needle marks. Jen held out a hand, and another darting pixie handed her hypodermic needle. Jen slipped it into the bend of his arm, still whispering to him, sliding the plunger slowly down. Slate's eyes rolled into the back of his head, and he sank to his knees. Jen went down with him, wrapped around him like kelp on a swimmer, her mouth next to his ear. Maeve lowered her hands in the wind. The cold died away. She lifted the shaking hand to her face and stepped back to the throne, settling stiffly into it. Narrowed eyes locked on Slate's increasingly malleable form. Her cheekbones stood out more sharply than before. Her eyes looked more sunken. She gripped the arms of her throne, her fingers twitching. "What the hell was that?" Billy whispered. "Probably what passes for a polite disagreement," I muttered. "Get up, we're leaving." I stood up. Maeve's eyes darted to me. Her voice came out dry, harsh. "Our bargain is not complete, wizard. This talk is. But I've not answered your question. Keep your answer. I don't need it anymore." "You don't?" Maeve asked. "We don't?" Billy said. I nodded toward Slate and Jan. "You had to push yourself to make him stand still. Look at you. You're just about as out of gas right now from going up against your own knight." I started down the tears, Billy coming with me. "Besides, you're sloppy, sweetheart. Reckless. A clean killing like Ruel's takes plan, and that isn't you." I could feel her eyes pressing against my back like frozen thorns. I ignored her. "I did not give you leave to go, wizard," she said, her voice chilly. "I didn't ask." "I won't forget this insolence." "I probably will," I said. "It's nothing special. Come on, Billy." I walked to the double doors and out. As soon as we were both outside, the doors swung shut with a huge hollow boom that made me jump. Darkness fell suddenly and complete, and I fumbled for my amulet as my heart lurched in panic. The spectral light from my amulet showed Billy's strained face first, and then the area immediately around us. The double doors were gone. Only blank stone remained where they had been. Billy said. He shook his head for a moment, dazed. "Where did they go?" I rested my fingers against the stone wall, reaching out for my wizard's senses. Nothing. It was rock, not illusion. Beats the hell out of me. The doors in here must have been away to some other location. Like some kind of teleport? More like a temporary entrance to the Never Never, I said. Or a shortcut through the Never Never to another place on Earth. Kind of intense in there. When she made it get all cold, I'd never seen anything like that before. Sloppy, I said. She was laying a binding on Slate. Her power was sloshing over into changing the temperature. A child could do better. Billy let out a short, quiet laugh. "After what we just saw, anyone else would still be shaking. You're giving her the rating from a Russian judge." "So sue me," I shrugged. "She's strong. Strong isn't everything." Billy glanced up at me. "Could you do what she did?" "I'd probably use fire." His eyebrows went up, his expression impressed. Do you really think Maeve's not the killer?" "I do." I said. "This murder was clean enough to look like an accident. Maeve's obviously got impulse control issues. Doesn't make much for a methodical murderer." "What about Slate?" I shook my head, my brow tightening. "Not sure about him. He's mortal. There's nothing that says he couldn't lie to us. But I got what I was looking for, and I found out a couple of things on top of that." "So why are you frowning?" "Because all I got is more questions." Everyone's been telling me to hurry. Fairies don't do that. They're practically immortal and they're not in a rush. But Mom and Grandma can both tried to rush me now. Maeve went for the high pressure sales tactic too, like she didn't have time for anything more sensible, more subtle. Why would they do that? Something's in motion, and if I don't run down the killer, the courts are going to go to war with one another. That would explain the whole World War II dress motif back there. Yeah, not why time would be so pressing. I shook my head. If we could stayed longer, I might have been able to work out more, but it was getting too nervous in there. Discretion and valor, Billy said by way of agreement. We leave now, right? Elodie, I asked. I felt stirring in my hair, and then the tiny pixie popped out to hover there in front of me. Can you lead us back to my car? The pixie flashed an affirmative and zipped away. I lifted my amulet and followed. Billy and I didn't speak until our guide had led us out to the underground complex not far from where I parked the Blue Beetle. We cut through an alley. About halfway down it, Billy grabbed my arm and jerked me bodily behind him, snapping, Harry, get back! In the same motion, he swung out one foot and kicked a metal trash can. It went flying, crashing into something I hadn't seen behind it. Someone let out a short, harsh gasp of pain. Billy stepped forward and picked up the metal lid that had fallen to the ground. He swung it down on the shape. It struck with a noisy crash. I took a couple steps back to make sure I was clear of the action and reached for my amulet again. Billy, I said, what the hell? I felt the sudden presence at my back, half a second too late to get out of the way. A hand the size of a dinner plate closed on the back of my neck like a vice and lifted. I felt my heels rise until my toes were just barely touching the ground. A voice of feminine contralto growled, let go of the amulet and call him off, wizard. Cut him off before I break your neck. You know, I said I wasn't going to do the full 2 hours. Here it is, almost 3 already. Good Lord. All right, I got one more chapter in me, then I'm going to have to take River for Outland. That's when we'll swap over to gaming and stuff. I can't believe it's already been an hour and a half. Wow, time flies. Chapter 16. Being held up by your neck hurts. Trust me on this one. I lifted my hands by way of attempting to convey compliance and said, Billy, get off of him. Billy took a step back to the pale-haired young man he had knocked down. Fix whimpered and scattered away on his hands and butt. His borrowed brown suit was soiled and torn, and his yellow polyester tie hung from his collar by only one of its clips. He put his back against the alley wall, eyes wide beneath the shock of white dandelion hair. Billy's eyes flicked from my assailant to Fix and back. He squinted at her for a moment and then said his jaw an expression of casual determination, Harry, you want me to take her? Wait a minute, I managed to say, okay, he's off, put me down. The grip on my back of my neck relaxed, and as I touched ground again, I took a step toward Billy, turning to face the woman who had helped me. As I expected, it was a tall, muscular young woman from the funeral home, her muddy green hair hanging lankily over her eyes and one cheek. She folded her arms and shifted her weight from one foot to the other. Fix, are you okay? The smaller man panted. My lip is cut. It isn't bad. The woman nodded and faced me again. All right, I said. Who the hell are you? My name's Meryl, she said. Her voice was surprisingly quiet, contrasting with her size. I wanted to apologize to you, Mr. Dresden, for hitting you and throwing you into the dumpster. I raised my eyebrows. Are you sure you got the right guy, Meryl? No one ever apologizes to me for anything. She pushed her hair with one hand. She pushed her hair with one hand. It fell right back over her face. I'm sorry. I was scared earlier and I acted without thinking. I traded a glance with Billy. Oh, okay. I'm pretty sure lurking in a dark alley to mug me with your apology isn't the usual way to go about saying you're sorry, but I didn't read that Mars Venus book, so who knows? By the way, for those of you that don't understand the reference, because like I said, this might be a little bit before some people's time, there was a book that came out years ago called Men Are from Mars, Women Are from Venus. Google it. Her mouth twitched and she relaxed her stance by a tiny degree. I didn't know how else to find you, so I was just waiting near your car. Okay, I said, my neck still throbbed where her fingers had clamped on. 5-1, I would have wonderful stripy bruises the next day. I nodded and turned away. Apology accepted. Now, if you excuse me, I have things I need to do. A note of panic crept into her voice. Wait, please. I stopped and looked back at her. I need to talk to you for just a minute. She took a deep breath. I need your help. Well, of course she did. It's very important. Of course it was. The headache started coming back. Look, Meryl, I've got a lot on my plate already. I know, she said, investigating Ron's death. I think I can help you. I pursed my lips. You were close to Rel. She nodded. Me, Fix, Ace, and Lily. I flashed back on the photo of Rel and the 4 young people. Green-haired girl, very cute. Yes, where's Ace? He had to go to work right after the funeral, but Lily's why I need to talk to you. She's missing. I think she's in trouble. I started filling in context of the conversation I'd overheard between them. Who are you? I told you, my name is Meryl. Okay, fine. What are you, Meryl? She flinched at the question. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know what you meant. She raised her hair again. I'm a changeling. We all are. A what? Billy asked. I nodded, getting it. Changeling. I said to Billy, she's half mortal, half fae. Aha, Billy said, which means what? I shrugged. It means that she has to choose whether to remain mortal or become wholly fae. Yes, she said, and until then I'm under the rule of the court of my fae father Winter, and the others too. That's why the four of us stuck together. It was safer. Billy nodded. Oh, Meryl, I said, what makes you think your friend's in trouble? She's not very independent, Mr. Dresden. We share an apartment. She doesn't have a very good idea of how to take care of herself, and she gets nervous if she's out of the apartment for too long. And what do you think happened to her the winter night? Billy frowned. Why would he hurt people in his own court? Meryl let out a brief hard laugh. Because he can. He had a thing for Lily. He would hurt her, frighten her. He got off on it. He was furious when Maeve told him to back off, and once Ron was gone, her voice trailed off, and she turned her head to one side. How does Ruel fit into this? I asked. He was protecting us. Maeve had been torturing us for fun, and we didn't know where to turn. Ron took us in. He put us under his protection, and no one in winter was willing to cross him. What about your Fae dad? Billy asked. Didn't he do anything to look out for you? Meryl gave Billy a flat look. My mother was raped by a troll. Even if he'd been strong enough to do anything about Maeve's hurting us, he wouldn't have. He thinks he'd already done enough by not devouring my mom on the spot. Oh, Billy said, sorry. I frowned. And with the summer night gone, you think Slate grabbed the girl? Meryl said someone broke into the apartment. It looked like there'd been a struggle. Have you contacted the police? She eyed me. Oh, yeah, of course. I called them and told them that a mortal champion of the Fae came and spirited away a half-mortal, half-Nixie professional new model to Fairyland. They were all over it. I had to admire the well-placed sarcasm. It doesn't take a supernatural stud muffin to cause something very bad to happen to a cute girl in this town. You plain old mortal kidnappers and murders can manage just fine. She shook her head. Either way, she's still in trouble. I lifted a hand. What do you want from me? Help me find her, please, Mr. Dresden. I closed my eyes. I didn't have time, energy, or brain power to spare for this. A smart thing would be to blow her off entirely or to promise her I'd do it and then probably forget about it. This just isn't a good time. I felt like crap the second I said it. I didn't look at the changeling's face. I couldn't. There's too much trouble. There's too much trouble already. I don't even know if I can help myself, much less your friend. I'm sorry. I turned to go, but Meryl stepped in front of me. Wait. I told you. I said, there's nothing I can... I'll pay you, Meryl said. Oh, right. Money. I was about to lose the office and the apartment, and this fair work only paid misery. I needed to pay some bills, go to the grocery store. My mouth didn't actually water, but it was closed. I shook my head again. Look, Meryl, I wish I could double your fee, she said, her voice urgent. Double my fee. I hesitated some more. Triple, she said. She reached for her back pocket and produced an envelope. Plus 1,000 cash up front right now. I looked back at Vic, still trembling and leaning against the alley wall, a handkerchief pressed to his mouth. Meryl continued to rock from one foot to the other, her eyes on the ground, waiting. I tried to look at things objectively. 1,000 books wouldn't spend if I got myself killed while distracted by the additional workload. On the other hand, if I lived through this thing, the money would be necessary. My stomach growled, and a sharpening of hunger made me clench the muscles on my belly. I needed the work, but more to the point, I needed to be able to live with myself. I wasn't sure I was comfortable with the idea of looking back on this particular patch of memory and seeing myself leave some helpless girl, changeling or not, to the metaphoric wolves. People don't ask me for help if they're anything less than desperate. The changelings had been terrified of me only a few hours before. If they had turned to me for help now, it was because they were out of options, and they also had money. Damn it, I muttered. I snatched the envelope. All right. I'll look into it and do what I can, but I can't make any promises. Meryl let out a shuddering breath. Thank you, Mr. Dresden. Yeah, I said. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a slightly crumpled business card. Here's my office number. Call and leave a message and let me know how I can reach you. She took the card and nodded. I don't know if I can pay your fee all at once, but I'll be good for it, even if it takes a while. We can worry about that later when we're all safe and sound, I said. I nodded her then to Fix and started walking down the alley again. Billy kept an eye on the pair of them and followed me. We reached the parking lot of the funeral home a few minutes later. The lights were all out, and the Blue Beetle was the only car left in the lot. No one had bothered to steal it. What a shock. So what next? Billy asked. I'll call Murphy, see what she can tell me about Lloyd's sleep. Billy nodded. Anything I can do to help? Actually, yeah. She said, get out the phone book and call the hospital, see if the morgues have a green-haired Jane Doe. You think she's dead, then? I think it would be a lot simpler if she was. Higgins calling morgues. There must be about 1,000,000 of them in Chicagoland. Isn't there anything else I could do? Welcome to the glamorous world of private investigation. You want to help or not? Okay, Bill said. My car's a block over. I'll get back to you as soon as I'm done making calls. All right, I'll probably be at my place, but if not, you know the drill. Billy nodded. Be careful, he said, and walked quickly down the street without looking back. I fumbled my keys out and walked to the Beetle. I didn't smell the blood till I was close enough to touch the car. Through the window, I saw a form more or less human shape curled up on my passenger seat. I circled cautiously to the other side of the car and then abruptly opened the door. Elaine fell out of the car and onto the pavement of the parking lot. She was drenched in blood that soaked through her t-shirt, matted her golden brown hair to one side and ran down her flank to saturate her jeans to mid-thigh. Her silver pinnacle shone with liquid scarlet. The bare skin of her forearms was covered with long slashes and blood, and her face looked white, dead. My heart hammered in my chest, and I leaned down to her, fumbling in her throat. She still had a very slow pulse, but her skin felt cool and waxy. She started shuddering and whispered, Harry, I'm here, Elaine. Please, she whispered, oh God, please help me. And that, my friends, is where I'm going to stop. Unfortunately, my voice is just not feeling it today. We're back to another ad break, but it's a nice little cliffhanger to leave you with. And yes, we do have another ad break in about a minute and a half. I am actually going to utilize that to make the swap over. I'm actually refreshing that because it's very cute. But that is where we're going to end today. Thank you so much for listening. The part 3 will be up on YouTube as soon as I can. There will be more next Wednesday, provided I'm not working that day. We're going to try and make this every Wednesday thing. Hopefully my voice will be in better shape then. I did have to do a lot of talking yesterday for various reasons. So, but anyway, I will be right back, guys. And we're going to swap over to a little bit of something. So, I'll be right back.